Another week and another legal talk here on the eRadio with Hahn Hahn attorneys. Joining me again from the firm today is Jaco Hamman, and we haven't spoken in ages. Jaco, welcome back to a legal talk. Isn't it your first one for 2025?
Hi, Ian. Yes, it indeed is. It's a privilege that I've got so many competent people in my firm that they can keep you guys busy. So but it's always nice being back and talking to you.
Thank you. Yeah, they're doing an amazing job, I must just tell you. So they're in good hands.
Oh, excellent. Thanks, I appreciate that.
So, just to follow up on our poll that we placed on LinkedIn on Friday, Trump versus Zelensky, the question that we asked was, from global disputes to local solutions, how compulsory mediation could transform SA's judicial system. What is mediation was one of the options. 29% voted for that. The majority voted for it won't make a difference, 43%. And then also finally a solution said 29% and 0% said it will never work. So at least we didn't have that option. But this is quite an interesting topic. It's actually a very, very hot topic at the moment, if you're following the news. Can you tell us a bit more about this topic, Jaco, that you have chosen?
Yeah, sure. So when I saw the video of what transpired with the individuals in the Oval, my first sort of thought was, I wondered if they will ever be able to come to some sort of an agreement again. And then the next thought that came up was the countless mediations that I've done over the years, which is probably now, I think the first one I did back in 2014. And most of these mediations start off with the same sort of feel that you get, that there's no way that these parties can reach an agreement. And then once you follow the process of mediation, and once you get the parties to actually start listening to one another through the mediator, in that instance you get and you see how they progress and how they move forward. But Ian, just before we proceed, seeing that we've asked the question now to the listeners, let me ask you what you understand about mediation. Now, of course, there's no right or a wrong answer. The idea is merely to engage what you understand about mediation.
Yes, of course. So, obviously, mediation is when you have, I would say, a third party coming in, helping to facilitate peace or some kind of agreement between two parties, the other two, that are usually at war or don't agree on something. I think that's how I would probably sum it up.
Excellent. No, that's a brilliant summary.
Thank
what
you.
is very important about that is that the person that acts as the mediator is that he's qualified in mediation specifically, because he has to know the process. Because if you try and play middleman, you would have seen in your own personal life and sort of other fights that you have, it's very difficult to get parties to come together. So, but if you've got the necessary qualifications and experience and the know-how of the mediation process, that makes a difference. And then, of course, what is very important is that you need to understand the industry within which you do the mediation. And the reason for that, why that is so important, is that if let's take me personally now. I don't do any family law divorces. I've got other colleagues that does that. But if I try and mediate that, I don't understand fully what the repercussions will be if the parties can't settle. Whereas construction law, that for me, I fully understand the jargon. I understand where this thing can lead to if the parties can't agree on one another. And then that I can put in their minds and let them understand how that will work.
Okay, Jaco, and then as we move on, can mediation really work, and how would listeners know if they can trust to this process?
Now, I want to use an analogy. Now, 10 years ago, if you would have told me that I will use public transport to go to a consultation, or have my mother picked up from the airport, or even for me to go out at night and have a couple of drinks with friends, or to go so far as my teenage kids using it on their own, I would have reminded you that I live in Gauteng and not in London. But today, we use, I want to say almost daily, companies like Uber and Bolt, and more recently, this Varna 2 that we're using up here in Gauteng. Now, people needed to understand what these companies are about, and then they needed to trust them. Another example is, let's use Takealot. I remember when I first heard about this Takealot, I mean, I was very skeptical about it, firstly, and secondly, I didn't really know how to use it. But now, it's not funny. I mean, I know hundreds of people that use Takealot, and yeah, let me rather put it the other way around. I don't know people who don't use Takealot anymore. Even in a small town in the Karoo like Williston, which I love the people there, they use Takealot to get their deliveries. Now, this is what needs to happen. The same thing with mediation. People need to understand mediation and then to begin to trust mediation. Now, if we look at where we are sitting, especially in the rest of the country, look the same, but look at Gauteng. If you want a court date now, you're looking at 2028. That is if you're lucky and all your processes are done.
Wow.
Now, that is just the unfortunate, crazy / ridiculous position that we are currently in. Now, that's unattainable. Now, if I'm the guy that wants, let's say you owe me R1 million, and now I want that money of yours. If I don't go through the mediation process, then I'm going to wait that long. Now, somebody might say, well, if I'm the guy that has to pay this money, then I'm not going to go through to mediation. I'd rather wait until 2028. Now, it sounds convenient, but it is quite short-sighted. And the reason for that is twofold. One, you are going to be, if you lose that case at the end of 2028, you'll be paying 11% interest at the moment. That's if there isn't a contract in place between the parties that regulate the interest. So now you can imagine now what you're doing is you're paying in any event 300 odd what thousand more plus all the legal fees. Whereas if you go through mediation and the parties are able to settle it now, you'll still be able to agree to a down payment if you are the party losing it, whatever the case may be. But at least then that the start date and the amount and all of that will get lower. And what we need to do is we need to convince the people out there that mediation can work, irrespective of whether you're the plaintiff or the defendant or the applicant or the respondent. And then what we need to do is we need to convince the attorneys that it can work. Because if the attorneys aren't convinced that it will work, then you've got a problem as well. Because they should be the ones that's driving it. Now, at the moment here in Gauteng, they've got this drive to make this mediation compulsory in the sense that the court is looking at wanting the parties to show them what they did in an attempt to mediate. Now, mediation, through its nature, is something that parties need to willingly enter into. And that's why some people are saying, so how will you make it compulsory if it is a requirement to willingly enter into it? It is a requirement to willingly enter into it, but you need to show that at least you've tried and not merely have a blanket letter sent out, so, well, I'm not willing to mediate, because then you haven't tried. And then the congestion isn't there. So hopefully in between this drive from the High Court and the Deputy Judge President and the Judge President of the High Courts to push this thing to have the attorneys show what they did to attempt mediation on the one end, and on the other end, we educating and making people trust the process. And I think the same with your Uber and Takealot and Bolt and Varna too. The more people that start using it, it'll eventually be a snowball effect that people will say, okay, but you know what? Instead of me, because you have to remember what the legal costs are that we're talking about in some of these instances, especially if it's a complicated matter, then you're talking about 300,000, 400,000 rand per day that it's costing you. And now imagine the trial has been set down now for 3 weeks. Let's multiply that by 15. Versus you do a mediation, and if it's a complicated matter, you finish it in 3 days. I mean, it's a no-brainer. The same principle as saying the Takealot is a no-brainer. You're sitting at home, you look what you want, you order it, and I'm not punting or advertising for Takealot. They're not my client, but you get the principle behind. So I really believe in this is the way to go. And if we do that, then we will lower the congestion in the courts, which will mean in those instances where parties really can't settle, that they can go to court. Because, just over 20 years that I've been in the practice, do you know how many matters have settled at the footsteps of the court?
Just before they go in.
Just before they go in.
That's amazing.
Now you have to remember, now you're sitting with the legal fees that has been paid up to date. And because it's the day of the court, you're going to be paying the advocate's fees for those time in court. And there's other costs and interest. And I always think to myself, had the parties just 3, 4, 5 years ago decided to do this, they would have saved them a lot of money and a lot of headache. So I honestly believe in mediation, and this is the way to go.
Yeah, I love it. On the court steps, I think that's brilliant. Talk about last minute, Jaco,
no, for sure.
Jaco Hamman from Hahn Hahn Attorneys, thank you so much for another insightful edition of Legal Talk.
Thank you, Ian. It was great talking to you again. All the best.
Nice to talk to you. Thanks, Jaco.
Are you or your business in trouble and struggling to find a solution? Call Hahn Hahn Attorneys as we assist clients in finding solutions. We specialize in consumer and food law, commercial and construction law, forensic investigations, and administrative law. Visit hahnlaw.co.za. That's HAHN. We assist clients nationwide. Hahn Hahn Attorneys, because we care. Don't miss Legal Talk with Hahn Hahn Attorneys, Wednesday mornings at 10 on eRadio.